Hello and welcome to Two Car Pros. Today we are going to take a look at how to replace the engine oil and filter for a 2003 Toyota Highlander V6. Let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is remove the oil pan drain bolt, making sure we have an oil catch basin ready to rock. And we can remove this bolt. There we go. When you're removing this bolt, make sure the washer on there comes along with it. Okay, so what you're looking at here are the oil pan drain bolt and washer that I removed. That's what this is here. And the new washer I'm going to be using. So I'm going to take the old washer off, and I'm not sure if you can see it or not, but there's quite a bit of scraping and galling on here. It's time to throw that in the trash. And I'm replacing with this washer that has a nice rubber insert here. These are available at any auto parts store for about 30 cents a piece. And you want to take a good look at your drain pan bolt, because you want to make sure the threads are in good condition like this one is, and make sure the head isn't rounded, which this one is not. So this one is in very good shape. It's a teeny bit of rounding on the edges there, but it'll work at least one or two more times. So we'll go ahead and replace this back in. Okay, so now we can clean off the mating surface on the oil pan here, making sure there's no residue or buildup. I'm actually going to spray a little carb spray on a rag here, really clean off that mating surface. Okay, and now we can replace the drain pan bolt with the washer we added earlier. Grabbing our 14mm socket, put it back on here. I believe the torque rating is 25 foot-pounds, but if it's not, I'll correct it on screen now. That's what I remember. It could be wrong. That looks pretty good. And now we can move on to the oil filter. Okay, so the next thing we need to do is remove this plastic valance piece here, or air dam, whatever you want to call it. You could probably get to the oil filter without removing it if you had smaller hands and you're willing to get scraped up, but I am not, so I'm going to remove this. All the bolts are 10mm except for these body clips, and I'll show you how to pull those out. Okay, so to remove these body clips is very, very easy. You just need to pry up the center. Once the center is pried out, the body clip should come with it. Now we need to do that for all the body clips holding the plastic underbalance piece on, and remove all the 10mm bolts. With all those fasteners removed, we can kind of pull backward a little bit and down, and the plastic underbalance piece should remove. Okay, so now we can remove the oil filter. Now if it's really stuck on there, we can use something like a large pair of channel locks, an oil filter wrench. There's even some large oil filter sockets that are made for this exact application in case it's on there too tight, but I'm just going to reach up there and see if I can get it off my hand. Okay. Yep, I got it by hand. So that's lucky. Now at this point, oil's probably going to start pouring out, so make sure you have a catch basin ready. There we go, and we can remove it. And when we're removing it, you also want to make sure that the O-ring comes along with the oil filter. If that O-ring is not in there, look up on the mating surface to make sure it's not still on there, because you don't want to replace your new oil filter with two O-rings. That will cause a massive leak. Okay, so next thing we can do is take a look at our oil filter. I'm going to be using a SuperTech ST3614, available at your local Walmart for a couple of dollars. I like that. And I guarantee you it's going to filtrate the same way a Mobile One or something else would. And what we can do is compare them. Don't worry so much about the heights. What you want to look at is the diameter of the filter itself and the threads. We want to make sure the threads are the same, which this is. So that's good. Okay, so the next step, once we've confirmed that this oil filter is compatible, which it is, we're going to grab some oil here, and it can be new oil, it can be old oil, because we're not priming the filter. You don't need to prime a filter because it fills within a second of turning on the engine. But what we do need to do is grab a bit of oil on the tip of our finger here and apply it to the O-ring, just like that. This will ensure a good seal when we replace it. And I'm not going to prime the filter because the filter fills within a second of turning on the engine. And I'll explain that process in a minute. I know I can hear a bunch of you pounding on your keyboard already that I said you don't need to prime the oil filter, and you really don't. And I can also hear you complaining that I said you could use old oil to lubricate the O-ring, but you can't because you're not getting all the oil out of the engine unless you take it apart, which we're not doing. So it doesn't matter anyway. And we're only creating a seal, we're not lubricating anything. So using the old oil is okay for that application. Now what I'm doing here is cleaning off the mating surface with a rag to make sure we get a good seal when we put the new oil filter in. And now we can replace the oil filter. So we want to make sure that it is on square with the threads and make sure we're not cross-threading anything, which this is not. Okay. So once it gets snug, this is the trick to oil filters. So once it gets snug, you want to go 3/4 turns more. And it doesn't have to be Hulk tight on there, or else you're fighting yourself when you're gonna take it off in the future. Okay, remembering how this went on. It was like this. Oh, I see. Like that. There we go. Perfect. And these screw bolts kind of go over here on the outside edges, and then the other ones are just regular bolts. Okay, and we can't forget to put our body clips in. So the way you do this is you insert the body of the housing in, and once in place, you push the center down, pushing the entire assembly forward, and that locks it in place. Okay, so the next thing we can do is remove the oil cap here. Just turn it to the left, we'll set that aside. And we need to place a funnel. So what I'm going to do is put 4 quarts in, and then check the dipstick to see where the level's at. At the end, I'll just tell you exactly how much I used, because everybody's more concerned with exactly how much I used rather than how to find it, which is okay. So I've put 4 quarts in, and I'm going to check it on the dipstick. So you pull the dipstick out, wipe it off, put it all the way back down into the dip tube, and pull it all the way back out. And you can kind of see, it's kind of hard to see, I'll admit, but it's right at the top dot, which is kind of where we want it, which is great, but we have not turned the engine on yet. So I'm going to go ahead and replace the oil cap and turn the engine on and let it run for about 45 seconds or so, and that will fill all the oil out in the engine. As a result, the oil level will drop, and we're going to need to add some more. Okay, now that we let the engine run for a little while, we need to check the level again. Yep. So, you can see that the majority of the oil is here in the middle of the dipstick, so it looks like we need to add about 1/2 quart more. Okay, now we can check the oil level again. We don't need to restart the engine because oil has already filled out the oil filter and the rest of the galleys. So we can check this again. This will be our final oil reading. And as you can see, it is very nearly the top. Right where the edge of my thumbnail is. It is very close. It is darn near the top, which is exactly where we want it to be. So I put 5 quarts in. So it looks like 5 quarts is where it wants to be. Okay, so that's how to change the oil in an 03 Highlander V6 model. The inline 4 should be super similar. If you're curious, thank you so much for watching. All applicable links are down below in the description, and I'll see you next time.